All right, up today is the McIntosh MA6100. I'm going to try to stay out of the frame because you can see me, right, because of the shiny glass. So I'm going to try to do this over here to the side. So McIntosh MA6100, I absolutely love this integrated amplifier. This one's mine. Bought it off eBay. I'll probably get into the story about that here in a little bit. I won't spend too much time on it though. Manufactured between 72 and 79, 70 watts per channel. Those measurements that I just flashed up, that's without the cabinet, I believe, in terms of the dimensions and the weight. Feels a little bit heavier than what I posted here. So in terms of the series information, so when I went to Mac's website, right, they had, and I was only looking at integrated amplifiers. I'm not pulling down all the information about all the amplifiers and preamps and all that stuff. I just looked at the integrated amps they offered at roughly the same time. So in 72, they were selling the 5100 and the 6100, and I would love to find a 5100. I've been looking, I can find one, I can buy one. I'm kind of a bargain shopper. I'm trying to get one at a good price and in really good shape, and I haven't come across one yet. So we had the 5100 and 6100 in 72, at least as far as I could tell. And then in 78, we had the 6100 and the 6200. And I have not come across or have not worked on a 6200 at this point in time. I've not worked on a 5100. However, the 5100 and the MA6100 receiver, they are, from what I understand, pretty similar in terms of serviceability, circuitry, those types of things. The 6100 and the MA1900, and I've worked on both of those extensively, they are very similar in terms of serviceability and circuitry. So, and when I say serviceability, you know, boards that kind of pop in and out, getting to things, topology is similar. That's kind of what I'm referring to. These came with or without the cabinet. The aesthetics, naturally, this is what has come to be kind of classic McIntosh, but I use that, I don't know, that phrase carefully, because really when I think classic McIntosh, I'm thinking more along the lines of the 5100, the 1500, the 1700. Although when you think of modern McIntosh and you look at this one, this is definitely more of a modern McIntosh look in terms of the faceplate. However, the knobs, right, these are classic McIntosh knobs. When you look at a 1900 or the 6200, right, you've got the round knobs, little black, kind of a little black insert in the middle, right? The knobs on this are more consistent with the earlier McIntosh receivers, right, and integrated amplifiers. So I say classic McIntosh, at least for this era, right? Because this was kind of sandwiched in between the old school and what has become kind of the more modern. Power, 70 watts per channel. The sound, perfect. I can't say enough about McIntosh, at least to my ears, how they sound. It's a very balanced sound, right? In terms of the topology, this isn't really capacitor coupled. It's not really direct coupled. It's some kind of thing in the middle. But to my ears, it just sounds wonderful, right? I'm always amazed at how McIntosh sounds. In terms of operation for one of these, so hookups can be a little bit confusing. You got a lot going on in the back. You have some things, some RCA connections that are used for diagnostic things, or connecting a tape deck, or something along those lines. Using this is fairly straightforward. Oh, and one thing you have to pay attention to on these is the speaker terminals in the back are reversed. So when I say reversed, when I'm looking at the speaker terminals, I would expect the right channel speaker terminals to be here, the left channel to be here. They're reversed. Same thing with some of the boards in here, and especially on the 1900. So you've got left channel amplifier board, right channel amplifier board. but that's the right channel, and this is the left channel. So you have to kind of watch out for that. But in terms of hooking this up, I've hooked up the speakers, you know, because a lot of times I'll place the gear into a cabinet and then I'll kind of slide it out, hook the speaker wire up, and sometimes I'll forget and I'll get the speakers reversed, for lack of a better, well, I mean, I get them reversed. That's basically what's happening. So hookups can be a little bit confusing. Using this is pretty easy. So the features and functions. So you've got input selector, you've got bass. Now this is split, so you can adjust bass for left and right, treble for left and right. This is balance, and it's also loudness, or the compensation. So you do have kind of a loudness contour on this. I'll come back to volume in a minute. You have a mode selector. So input selector, right, what you're going to be listening to. Mode selector is how it's going to be presented. So is it going to be stereo, only right, only left, left, right, you know, mono, whatever, right? So you can change the way the music is going to be presented to you. We have buttons for tape monitor 1 and 2. Tape copy, we have 2 of those buttons. We have a low and a high filter. We have 180-degree phase. The owner's manual will talk about using this button. So you can go in there, and I didn't even look at it before I came down exactly how that's used, but I'll snap up a little blurb from the owner's manual and talk about what that's used for. I think it's used for, well, I'm not even gonna guess. And then you have main and remote speakers on or off. So if the button is out, it's on. If they're pushed in, the speakers are off. Naturally, I don't have speakers hooked up to this, so I have them both turned off. Then we have the volume. Now the volume, this is also the power button, or the power potentiometer, right? Power knob. What that means is, right, to turn this on, you use the same potentiometer and power switch, right? They're kind of all in one unit, sort of. What happens with these over time, though, is if you're constantly turning this off and on, right, sometimes it will cause issues, and these are known to have issues with mistracking. So what happens is the little carbon track in there, it's attenuated, more or less, and it will wear down if you use the wrong type of cleaner. You can actually remove some of the resistive coating, I believe, is what goes on with these. So what'll happen is you'll turn it up, and the right channel will get louder, the left channel will be not as loud, and then sometimes you've got to back it off. Sometimes the 2 wafers, the glue that was used, so you've got the 2 wafers, it'll get a little bit loose on one of them. So when you go to turn it up, right, one wafer is kind of lagging behind the other, so sometimes you have to kind of turn the knob backwards. It's really goofy. And I've replaced these. I bought replacements from McIntosh, and even the brand new ones, they seem to have issues sometimes, especially the aftermarket ones for sure will have issues at times. So anyway, you've got the volume control, which is there. It also turns it off and on, and you're going to have issues with it. Just know that it's going to happen eventually. Best practice is to not use this to power it off and on. I do, but I can replace it easily if I can find the part. You know, if I weren't a tech, I would probably just turn it off and on with a power strip or something like that. Serviceability, I'll say intermediate, although I found the 1900 and the 6100 to be a little bit on the easier side, but I'm not going to say it's easy. One thing you have to be, or one of many things you have to be aware of on these, is there are some parts in here that you cannot find. So McIntosh uses part numbers. You've got to look up the part number and then decipher what component was actually being used, and then see if you can find that actual component. I was working on a 1900 I bought off of eBay, which there's a series on it. I think I put it out there before this one. I'm not sure, but I had to find there's a transistor that was wired as a diode, and I had to find a diode to replace that transistor, germanium transistor that was wired as a diode. So it was kind of a goat rope going through that and figuring out what I could put in that position. So just understand that there may be some parts in here where you think, oh, I can just replace this real easily, and sometimes you cannot. So there might be some parts that, you know, there's not an easy modern substitution for it, I guess is the best way to put that. As mentioned, the 5100 and the 1700 and the 6100 and the 1900, they're very similar, at least has been my experience when I'm working on them. I already mentioned the reversed speaker terminals, the reversed boards, right? Sometimes it doesn't make sense, and it's easy to kind of get lost sometimes if you're not really paying attention to what's going on. I will say, however, that the documentation I've come across on Mac gear has been really good. The owner's manuals are very comprehensive. The service manuals are typically pretty good. Now, some of the older gear, it's a little hard. There aren't a lot of illustrations or diagrams to go by. But typically there's a lot of information in there. So I do appreciate that with Macs. I have not encountered one, and I'm sure there are some older amplifiers where it's really hard to find information on, but the stuff that I work on, the mid-70s stuff, the early 70s stuff, I've had pretty good luck finding documentation to go in and work on it. So in terms of picking one of these up, so number one, the cabinet. So they came with the cabinet, without a cabinet. You know, if a cabinet is important to you, it seems like a lot of these come and they're pretty beat up. This is a McIntosh cabinet. It's missing the mesh on the top. So this screen that would normally sit here is gone. I got this at a great price. I got it for less than $900 in the cabinet, not working. You know, with the cabinet, that at the time was a decent price. I mean, I could buy a basket case for around $6 without the cabinet, maybe with the cabinet, but you know, it might have cracked glass or something like this. But this one was super clean. I mean, you can see it's very clean. There's a little bit of black that's kind of flaked off the back of the glass on this side, you can see, and I just haven't touched that up. You can kind of cheat with some of that and just take a little bit of black paint, like I get some tester, you know, model paint, and I just kind of dab it on there and it covers it up, at least good enough, right? You can get faceplates for these, but they're like $300 to $400. So, you know, so anyway, cabinet would be the first consideration. The second would be the glass, because again, if you have to replace the glass, you're spending hundreds of dollars, right? So make sure the glass is intact. Make sure there's a picture of it with the lamp, with the lights on, with the lamps on, because that's how you can see if there's paint flaking off of the back of the glass. If not, right, then you have to kind of question or you know, ask yourself the question, like, why is this not powered on, right? Maybe they powered it on and a bunch of magic smoke came out. I don't know. So the glass is a big thing. The knobs are a big thing, right? So you've got to get the right knob for these, and I found this out the hard way with my 1900. When I ordered potentiometers, right, for my 1900, the potentiometers are positioned differently in there, right? And when you have a knob for something like a volume control, right, if you get a replacement potentiometer, the knob, instead of it being aligned like with the off position, may be way up here. So what I'm getting at is, if it's missing a knob, you can't just all the time, right? You can't just say, well, I'm going to buy a volume knob for a 6100 because the little tiny groove on the inside, and I don't really want to try to pull that off, it may not align correctly is what I'm getting at. Because when I had the two 1900s, based on the serial number, the potentiometer little kind of half moon, right, is in a different position based upon the serial number. So you can't always, and I'm not saying that's true with this, but you can't always just buy a knob for this and have it actually align correctly, right? So I would make sure all the knobs are there. I would make sure that these buttons are all present. Now, it's common to find one of these with a button that's missing, right? You can buy these, right, from like Audio Classics. They're, I think, $20 or maybe even less. Here's the issue though. If a button is missing, the white nylon plastic shaft that the button connects to, right, it kind of clips on there, is likely broken. So just don't assume, oh, it's missing a button, I can just buy a new one, because the actual shaft may be damaged. Now, I haven't come across one where I couldn't kind of convince it to work with a little bit of glue. But man, once you glue that in there, you're basically gonna have to break it to get it off. Now, I typically will just kind of get it in there, tack it in there. I don't like to glue them in place, at least with something like super glue. I would use a glue that's a little bit softer that will make removing this easier if you have to. But it's just something to be aware of. Just because it's missing a button cover here doesn't mean that you can just buy one and pop it on there, because it may not actually clip to it and stay in place. So glass, knobs, buttons, jumpers in the back, right? Hey, I'm an estate sale company. I'm selling this on eBay, and I turned it on and there's no sound. Always look at the pictures and see if there are jumpers. Now, just because it's missing jumpers doesn't mean you can just plug it in and turn it on and have it work. That's literally what happened with this one, right? Not working in the case, pretty clean. Cabinets, at least no veneer is coming off. It's presentable, right? And I think it was less than $900. But anyway, I got this, plugged the jumpers in the back, cleaned the controls, and this thing, knock on wood, right, has performed flawlessly. It's been just a fantastic amplifier. I've had it in my office. I pulled it out because I do have to do some maintenance. I'm going to finally fix that. But, and I might do some other little piddly things to it. So anyway, where was I at? I lost my train of thought. Oh, so cabinet, buttons, all that kind of stuff. In terms of price, so the cabinet will add a couple $100, right? Likely to add a couple $100, so keep this in mind. Now, you can find people asking crazy prices for this, just like with everything else. So I'll flash up the obligatory, somebody's trying to get lucky here. Oh, this light I have to replace too. I think that might be what I was thinking of. So anyway, it's been one of those mornings. My mind's just scatterbrained. I have surgery scheduled in like 10 days, so my mind's not 100% there. So anyway, to find one of these in really, really good condition with the cabinet restored, you know, I could see paying around $2,000, maybe a little bit more. I think I'll flash up this time capsule that I found, right? It was perfect condition, a box, manuals, all that stuff. I think they sold it for over $2,000. I would say one like this, if this cabinet was intact, maybe a little bit cleaner, the faceplate was flawless, it's operating, you know, very, very well. $1,500, I think, is a good price. That might be a little bit high. To get one in this shape, in the cabinet especially, again, and I'm going by in the cabinet because that's what this one is. In the cabinet, I would say around $1,000, right? So in the shape, working in the cabinet, right? Now, had I gambled on this $900 and this was a basket case, it would have been a bad buy, right? So when I say this was a good buy, it's because I literally have not done anything to this, and it has worked very, 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 very well, right? So about $1,000, and that's typically what I see on eBay. To get one of these for parts, right? Something that you want to repair on your own, $600. And again, if it doesn't have the cabinet, you can probably get one of these for less than $5,000 if you look long enough. Now, people think that these are worth, you know, tons of money. They're great amplifiers, but it's not the be-all end-all of the amplifier world. So I wouldn't say that this is, you know, some magical unicorn out there. So, you know, when I look today, there are so many of these out there right now. It's ridiculous, and the prices are really high, in my opinion. So again, if you hold out, you can probably get one of these to work on for less than $500. But again, if you buy one with cracked glass, realize that you're into it for another probably $200 to $300, right? So you got to keep that in mind as you're looking for one of these to work on. So I think that's all I have on the Mac MA6100. I finally got around to shooting this. I got some time. I've got a whole bunch of video I'm going to be editing because I won't be able to lift more than 10 pounds for like a month. So I've got all these videos in the queue I'll be editing during my convalescence. I've got another one coming up right after this, which I think will be interesting. In fact, I'm going to shoot that here in a couple of minutes. before I go work out. But anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. So Mac MA6100, great integrated amplifier. This is a keeper, right? Love listening to it. Can't go wrong with McIntosh. So as always, if you like what you see, hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.